Good morning, everybody. Memo Valverde with London Foster Realty. We're going to be going over a section of our back office, www.londonfoster.net. We're going to be going into the office manager, and under the office manager, we're going to go into contracts and forms. In this section, we have downloaded the most important contracts and forms that realtors work on. Today we're going to go over the exclusive right to lease, which is basically your listing agreement with your seller. Within this contract, we are going to review all the sections of the contract and, more importantly, how to fill it out the most efficiently and easiest way. So we're going to move out of this contract, out of the londonfoster.net section, and I'm going to take you into the Miami Association of Realtors. We're going to click on the dashboard. We're going to make sure that we log in. And once you log in, you're going to use a couple of different tools to make sure that you have the pertinent information in order for you to do this. Okay? The very first thing you're going to open up is your matrix. Within your matrix, obviously, if you're getting a listing agreement, it is not up on the matrix, but there are ways of looking up past deals or past sales or past rentals so that you can actually find the MLS number. So for instance, if we were doing a listing and you know the address, well, maybe what we could do is we could look it up through past rentals. So we would click out the active, maybe look up the rented, and we're going to type in the address. Okay, and if I know that the house number is 945 and that it is 180th Terrace that I'm interested in, then therefore I can look up in the past rentals. Here I just took out all the dates, so I'll know that there are 2 rentals that match this criteria. It just so happens it happens to be the same exact property. It happens to be the same property that I rented out in the past. So I can click on this MLS number and I can pull up the previous listing on this property, because what I'm interested in is right here, where I'm interested in the folio number. Okay? Once I have a folio number, what I can do is I can pull from that folio number, I can pull the information that is public record and put it into the contract so that I'm not typing it in myself. A, it makes it a lot easier for me to do, but B, it avoids us from using an error. As you know, the folio number is going to pull up the description. It's also going to pull up any information regarding the owner. You want to make sure you're pulling it from the public record for 2 reasons. One, because if there is an error, then the contract is void. If you wrote that the contract was under Bob Smith and the owner happens to be Jane Smith, it just so happens that you have a contract with someone that is not the owner. That's the first part. And the second part is if there is any kind of mistake, then the owner has the right to basically say this contract is null and void because you wrote the address incorrectly. So we want to protect ourselves. Okay? So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this folio number. And as you can see, this is going to take me to IMAP. Within IMAP, I'm going to be able to know who the owner is. And if I click on the folio number, it'll take me to look at their taxes. I'll get a better picture of how they're doing and whether or not they're paying their taxes. Pertinent to a listing? No, but you also you want to protect yourself, especially on a sale. This one obviously is for a lease. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into the taxes and I'm going to utilize that folio number right here. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to copy it. I'm copying this obviously instead of writing it down and rewriting it so I avoid making mistakes. I'm going to go back into Matrix and I'm going to find out a little bit of information about this property. I'm going to look at the size. I'm going to look at everything, make sure that everything matches, make sure that everything that's listed on the MLS and that's listed on the public record is correct. Then I'm going to go back into my dashboard And on my dashboard, I'm going to be opening up Form Simplicity. Form Simplicity is the software that we utilize to create contracts. It is owned by the Florida Association of Realtors, so it's always the most up-to-date. It's definitely the tool we want to be using. And I'm also going to show you guys not only how to pull information, I'm going to walk you through the contract, but finally I'm also going to show you how to utilize the e-sign function so that we can have our clients sign the contracts electronically. And we use this from Form Simplicity. There are some agents that prefer to use .loop. You're welcome to use that. Some use ExecuSign. You can use whatever you like. This is the form that we prefer because it's integrated, and because obviously since it's owned by the Florida Association of Realtors, the contracts are always up to date. Okay, so that being said, now I'm in Form Simplicity, and this is the Form Simplicity page for London Foster agents. So if you're going to go into a library, you're going to be able to look at every single contract that has ever been issued by the Florida Association of Realtors. But more importantly, you're going to be able to go into the form packages, and these are packages that your broker has created for you. These are a grouping of contracts specifically on a certain subject. So for instance, since we're doing the listing agreement for a rental, we're going to scroll down and we're going to see here where it says listing package for a rental. If you were to click on this, it'll show you which packages are included. Within that is the exclusive right of lease agreement. It is the complying with lead-based paint if the property is before 1978, and the lead-based paint information pamphlet, and an authorization for a credit report. Okay, so since we're going to be doing it on a property that is more recent than 1978, that probably won't come into play. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Library, Forms and Packages, pick the form and package that I'm looking for, which is Listing Package Rental, and then I'm going to go to this long green bar that says Create Transaction from Selected Package. What I'm doing there is I'm saying, for this package that I'm creating, I want you to pull this package called the Listing Package for Rental, and I'm going to choose an address what I'm going to do it in. So obviously I could sit here and rewrite the address, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to go back into Matrix and I'm going to copy the address. I'm going to paste it. Let's try that one more time. I'm going to copy, which if you're on a PC is a Control-C, and then I'm going to paste it, which if you're on a PC is Control-V. Again, Control-C, Control-V, and there I've copied the complete address. What I like to do, and this is just me, is that then I will copy this check right here where it says Save as Property Address. I like to keep it to the name of the property address just in case if the owners do change. Therefore, I still have the listing on the property. And I'm going to save this. So once you save this, what's going to happen is that it's going to create a package named what you named it, which is here, this is the physical address. It's going to have all those contracts that I promised it would have, and it's going to have a couple of functions. Well, I'll show you really quick. You're going to have an email address designated to that package. So what is that for? That's, let's say for instance, if you need to get a copy of the LLC because it's written out to a family trust or it's written out to an LLC. So you want to include that in your package. You want to make sure that your client emails that to you. You can give this email to your client, and any documents that are signed, that are emailed to that email address will be included in your package. Since we are not going to be doing a lead-based paint, because this property is more recent than 1978, I'm going to go ahead and click on these three things and I'm going to delete them. So I can come here to the choose forms below and I can pick from all of these delete. So I'm telling it, please choose these forms that I have clicked and delete them. Once I delete them, they are gone. Once this is done, you're going to see that the transaction is called this, the package is called this. You're going to see what the physical address is. You see that I have an email address. We're going to go to the second tab. The second tab is going to be for the content. And here, we're going to go back and copy with Control-C this folio number. Once you have that folio number, you're going to go to the tax search section, which I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see it clearly. Right here, the tax search section, and you're going to pick the county for which it pertains. In this example, we're using Broward County, and you are going to paste that folio number. Once you do that, you can request that it finds it. It's going to take you to an option, which is here in blue. You double check that the address matches and it is the correct one, and you're going to go ahead and select it. Once you select it, what you have done is from the public records from those taxes, you've pulled that in to your package. So now all the information that is pertinent on this property is going to appear here in the content section. So let me scroll down so I can show you. Here we have the address, the city, the state, zip code, the full address, the county parcel, which is your folio number, your county, your full description, this is your legal description, the year which it was built, who the owners are, what their address is, etc., etc. Okay? So you want to make sure that you save this information so that you have everything up and ready. Now what you can do next is you can go back into the content section and you can go ahead and pull in information regarding yourself. So if you are the seller's agent, you are going to write in the broker's name, you're going to write the London Foster ID and who your broker is, which is Bobby at londonfoster.com. You're going to write in your information, your ID, your email, your phone number, okay, and you're going to make sure that you did this correctly, which I did not. You're going to make sure that your broker reflects your broker's name, which is Bobby Mahalati, that it says what your brokerage is, which you'll see here, it says London Foster. It's going to ask you London Foster's full address, which is 407 Lincoln Road, Suite 10G, and this is in Miami Beach, Florida 33139. The phone number, which is 305-514-0100. Okay, and once you have that all written out, you're going to save it. Once you save it, it's going to send you back to the original page where we can see the contract. You filled out the content. What we're going to do now is we're going to click on that particular contract and make sure that everything that we've put in, both what we pulled in from before and what we added, has come together. Okay, so as you can see now, it'll tell you who the owner is, which is Juan and Maria Murillo Family Living Trust. If it is not spelled out, we want to make sure we write it out. Okay, it's going to tell you who your broker is, which is London Foster. It's going to tell you that the authority to lease property, the owner gives the broker the exclusive right to secure a tenant and real personal property described below, beginning on the day. So in other words, this is when you're going to start the contract. Let's say we're starting the contract August 1st. I would click on August 1st, press tab, and automatically it'll go in there. And I'm going to say when this right to lease, in other words, when this listing agreement expires. I would not recommend that you take a listing agreement for less than 6 months. Usually you want to take it for a little bit longer, 6 months and a day. Are we expecting it to take that long to rent? Of course not. But if we're going to invest the time, the energy, the money to make professional pictures, to do a drone video, to do open houses, to show it, we want to make sure that we're protected. So if we've got August 1st is the first day, that means that the 6 months would be February 1st. So I would probably recommend that you do it until the end of February. So we're going to move past this and do it for February 29th. Okay, we hit tab, and as you can see, it fills it out completely. It's going to tell us what the property description is, what the address is, and what the legal description is. It's going to tell us what is included in the personal property. This includes appliances. Okay, so let's say for instance, what's included in the personal property? Do you need to say that the pool is included? No, the pool is fixed to the property, so you would not need to add that. You would need to add anything that is not attached to the property, like a bookshelf that is not attached, which is not a built-in. For instance, all the appliances, be it refrigerator, oven, range, microwave, anything that is not attached. Even the hood would be something that would be considered an appliance because it's electrical, so you want to make sure that you include that. But let's say for instance you've got the patio furniture in a condo. They don't want to take it with them, so they have it out there. You want to write that. If the apartment is completely furnished and you want to do an addendum, it's not a bad idea to do an addendum with an entire list of all the inventory. So here you could write what the appliances are and please see list attached of all the furnishings and soft items. So we're going to write it out, and I'm going to write it out for you guys. I like to write everything out. I do not like to abbreviate, simply because in every country things are called different, so I like to write it out. So I'll write refrigerator, range, oven, microwave, vented hood, dishwasher, wine fridge, washer and dryer, and see attached list of furniture and soft items. Okay, that's a pretty decent and complete description. There might be something else that's there. You might have a freezer, an additional freezer. It depends on the property, but this is more or less the idea, and you get the idea. Occupancy, you want to make sure that you list in the agreement whether or not the property is occupied. More than likely it is not occupied, but if it is occupied by the landlord, you need to state that. If it's occupied by the tenant, you need to state that. You also need to state when the tenant is moving out. So in other words, if you have a tenant that is moving out at the end of September, even though you have the listing, it's understood that you're going to have to work with that tenant, so that is protected there. In this case, we're going to say that it's not occupied. We're gonna find out what the rental terms are. The rental terms, you can state them here whether you want them in monthly or yearly. More commonly, we write monthly. So let's say it was $2,300. That is what we're gonna be charging per month. You don't need to reiterate what it is per year. It will come up later on in the transaction. But right now what you're saying is, listen, I'm going to request that this is rented monthly for $2,300. If you wish to do it yearly, then what you would need to do is just multiply what 2,300 is times 12. Which comes out to $27,600. Okay, and you can state it that way. Okay, advance rent, deposit, and fees. I'm sorry. Here you can also write if it's a seasonal rental, and you can specify if there's any additional fees or any additional services that are going to be paid for by the tenant, be it water, garbage, association dues that are not I'm sorry. Cut.
We didn't pick up where you left off.
Huh?
You didn't pick up where you left off.
Okay. Don't you want me to stop it until so you know that there's something to correct?
No, I'll just rewind it and you're good.
But how will you know? Are you gonna be listening to it?
Yeah, listen to all of them.
Oh, okay.
I have to rewatch everything.
Okay. So here you can specify whether or not it is a seasonal rental and when the seasonal rental runs from. In other words, if it's a season that runs from only the summer, so you want to say that it starts at the end of May and that it ends at the beginning of September and that you're only going to rent it weekly. However it is you want to specify it, you want to try to do it as complete as possible. You can also specify any services or fees such as water, garbage, and association dues that are included in the rent. Okay, so this is where you would want to write any specific details on this particular property that are included in the rent. This is more commonly used for, let's say, for this house, if the gardening was included, or if it had a pool and the pool maintenance was included in the rent, which is always a very good idea because that way you know that the house is being maintained. Advance rent, deposits, and fees. Advance rent and deposits will be held by, and here you would say whether it's being held by the broker or by the owner. In this case, we're going to do it by the owner, and we're going to say that it's going to be held in a non-interest bearing account. And it could say if it is in an interest bearing account, who's going to be holding it and what percentage they're going to be getting. You're going to advise what kind of advance rents you're going to hold. So it is very common that what we usually do is we hold your last month's rent and 1 month's deposit is what you're going to require in order for this rental to be done. I have been leaning towards requesting 2 months deposit and having the tenant pay out every single month during the 12 months so that therefore the owner holds a little bit more capital just in case this person decides to destroy the apartment or the property or to break the lease, so it has a little bit of more leverage. But you can specify this here. So again, you can say what advance rent you would like to collect. So you would maybe say you're going to hold $2,300. Security deposit, you can say you're holding 2 months security deposit. Okay. If there is a pet deposit, you want to make sure you write that if it's refundable or non-refundable. So let's say there is a pet deposit of $500 and it is not refundable. That means that this person understands that they're going to pay this fee to be able to allow a pet and that the owner is going to keep the $500 regardless of whether or not the house has been damaged at all, because they're planning on having the house cleaned or it's simply what they're requesting. If there's a credit report fee, you need to make sure that you identify that they're going to charge the tenant up in advance $150 in order to do a credit report. There could be other fees that are being withheld. There might be a clean out fee if it's a short-term rental. There could be a repainting the home fee. If it's an apartment and you say, listen, every time that I rent it out, I have to pay a fee of $1,000. You've got to pay that at the end of the lease. We can write that out there. And so you would write what it is. So you could say a repainting fee of $1,000. So what does that mean? That means that when you go to return the deposit, you're going to return the deposit minus those $1,000 that you are withholding. If there's an association and they require an application fee, you want to make sure that you specify that also. And if there's any other additional fees, I've seen some owners that what they do is they charge a $75 fee to have the water connected under their name. So basically they're holding like a $75 deposit that is non-refundable, that they say, listen, I'll keep the water under my name, you just pay the bill, but if for any reason you haven't paid the bill, then I'm gonna take it out of there. Okay? Taxes. Leases for a term of 6 months or less are subject to state tax. You wanna make sure that you specify that that is the case. Association approval must be made, and I usually write here within 5 days of offer. Or the contract to lease acceptance. This is just to safeguard. This is something that you need to understand. Every condo association works differently. If you have a big condo association that is used to working with tons of rentals, they're going to be a lot more proficient and a lot easier to deal with. If you've got a small condo association that maybe they're not even living in the US, sometimes they take up to a month to get somebody approved. So you need to make sure that you have discussed this and that you're aware of it with your seller. Hey, listen, this could be an obstacle, so I need to know how long it takes and what the requirements are. And here we're going to go under some of the broker, this is section 4, we're going to go under some of the broker obligations. Here it's about the consideration of the owner's agreement is to enter into an agreement. Broker agrees, and remember, we're always dealing with the broker, not with the agent. Your broker, in other words, London Foster, agrees to be diligent in effort to lease the property, furnish information, to assist cooperative brokers in negotiating leases, furnish information to assist attorneys when needed to draft leases. In other words, we're going to do our due diligence and do the best that we can in order to make sure that this happens. So here we're going to go over some of the requirements or some of the things that we do or do not do, and we need to click or check off on them so that the seller is aware of exactly what's going to be. For instance, display appropriate transaction signs, including for rent sign, on the property. Well, if it's a condo, you cannot do that. So this is a home, so I should be able to do it. But guess what? It's part of a homeowners association, so no, we are not permitted to do it. This is the reason why we're checking it off, is so that the owner understands what we can and cannot do, and so that the realtor understands what that the landlord has a perception in their mind of what they're expecting. Use the owner's name in connection with marketing or advertising the property. This is something that's very uncommon, but sometimes maybe if the owner's the one that's showing it, you might say, call Bob Smith and make sure that Bob Smith at this phone number, he'll be able to show you. So if you are going to be using his name, you need to make sure that you click that. Using a lockbox system to access the show the property. This is very common in Florida, very common in Miami. It's very efficient. I do not recommend lockboxes. I recommend that you spend the money and get a Supra, simply because there is a better monitoring of it, of who went in, who went out, what time they left, what time they came in. But it is very common, and you need to make sure that your owner is aware that someone is going to be going into their vacant property. Request a credit check on the prospective tenants at the owner's expense. Broker makes no responsibilities as to the truth or falsity of the information provided by the prospective tenant. This is when the owner is paying the credit check. Again, we just said previously that the tenant is going to be doing it, but if the owner is the one that's going to be requiring a separate credit check for this person, here you'd have to click it. Execute leases on behalf of the owner. Owners must execute a special power of attorney authorizing the broker to lease the property on their behalf. This is very uncommon nowadays with e-sign, there's really no reason for you to be doing this. Again, if this is the case, you need to get a power of attorney. You would have to have that created by an actual attorney and get it signed and notarized by a notary. Again, this is something that is very rare. The next one would be to compensate any sub-agents or cooperating brokerages and transactions. This is very common because we're going to withhold the first month's rent and pay out the commission to both yourself as a listing agent and to the renter's agent from that first month. So you want to make sure that you get authorization to do that. You want to make sure that you have the authorization to withhold any additional offers, because once they've gone into contract, it probably doesn't make very good sense for you to keep on telling them, oh, we got another guy. Let's focus on the one that we're trying to close. Make a final inspection and inspect and do an inventory check of the property at conclusion of the lease. That's something you probably want to click so that you make sure that you're adding that service to your client, so that when they're ready to re-rent it, they're giving you the listing agreement again. Complete lease forms as permitted by law. That's something that we want to make sure that we have authorization. And then complete and sign the lead-based paint hazard certification on the owner's behalf. Again, I would not recommend that. I think the owner needs to be aware if their property does have lead-based paint or runs the risk. So again, through e-sign, you wouldn't have to do that. Now we're going to go off to the next section, which has to do about advertising. This is simply, I don't recommend you filling any of this out, because this is only when the owner is looking to opt out from being on the internet, which is not recommendable, especially not for rentals. You want to make sure that you have as big a pool as possible to pull from. So you want to make sure that your owner does not opt out of including their address or opt out from being used by some of the virtual offices. Owner obligations. Under the owner obligations, you're going to make sure that the owner agrees that they are going to cooperate with the broker when it comes to sharing the property. They're going to refer any new inquiries that come to them personally, whether it be a friend or a neighbor, because now you're in an exclusive right to sale agreement, that they come to you. Make sure that the property is available to the broker, and you want to specify what keys are going to be put in there. You want to notify the broker in the event the tenant terminates a lease early. Why? Well, because this lease is under my jurisdiction, and if it's breaking, then I need to make sure that I know of it so that I can re-rent it and furnish you that service. You want to make sure that you advise the broker if you're planning on conveying the property. You also want to make sure that you specify that if you're using a lockbox, that you are not liable for anything that could happen, because you're releasing yourself from that because other people are going to be doing it. And not to restrict the rental according to race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familiar status, national origin, or any other classes protected by law. You also want to make sure that the owner is aware that if they're going to refuse a service member, that they need to do it in writing. To provide a complete and accurate information to the broker, disclosing any materials that affect the value of the property. Like, for instance, if there was a flood or if there was a fire, that's something that they need to release. Here it talks about the indemnity and hold harmless broker and broker's offices, director, agents, whatever. If there's any misstatements, to reasonably inspect the property before the property is taken over by the tenant, so that if there are any issues, they are resolved. Here it talks about any sex offenders or predators. If there are laws that protect within communities, be it a neighborhood, a state, or a city, against sex offenders, and it is the owner's responsibility to know this, so that if there is a sex offender moving into the property and they are excluded, that the owner protects himself from it. So you want to make sure that you have this stated and the owner knows about it. Compensation. Here we talk about how we're going to be paying, how we're going to be paid by the owner. And basically there are 4 options. The most common one is this one right here, which is to get paid 100% of the first month's rent, which is what was being held in escrow, and then that gets divided by the listing agent, be it yourself, and the renter's agent 50-50. This is the most common one. There are other circumstances that could affect how this happens. For instance, if he's looking to pay 100% or 1 month's rent for a yearly rental, and this rental is only for 9 months, well, basically what you're saying is you're only going to pay me 3/4 of that entire 100%. So what the owner would then be saying is, you know, I'm going to be paying you only 1 month's rent per year, and if you rent for less than a year, then I'm going to pay you accordingly. So in that instance, what that is that you take the number 1 divided by 12, and it comes out to 8.33. So in that instance, you might say 8.33, so that if you're renting it for 7 months, you would calculate what 7 months times 8.33 of that total rent would represent, and that would be one way. On some short-term rentals, they pay a higher percentage, sometimes up to 25%, sometimes 20%. Very commonly, it is 10% of the rent. So when it's a short-term rental and they're paying 10% of the rent, so let's say, for instance, someone is renting a property for $2,300. If someone is doing a rental for $2,300, for instance, and that $2,300 times if someone is doing a rental for $2,300 and that $2,300 times 12 comes out to $27,600, that would be the yearly rent. If you were to divide that by 365 days, that gives you a daily rate of $75.62. So let's say somebody was renting a house for only 75 days. What you would want to do is multiply that number times 75, and that would give you a total rent for that period of $5,671.23. What you would want to do there is that you are understanding that this person is only going to pay you 10% of that, which comes out to $567.12 to be divided between the listing agent and the renter's agent. So that is a way of doing it specifically. The other one, and the final one, is usually when somebody is just paying a flat fee. It's not very common, but it does happen sometimes that an owner will say, listen, I'll only pay you $500 to rent out this apartment. I don't care if it's for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year and a half. I'm only paying $500. And there you would pay that, you would specify that. The next one has to do with the time and manner of payments. And the most common one is this one. Like I said before, the broker will deduct its fee from the rent collected by the broker after said rent becomes due or owing to the owner. If said rent is insufficient to cover the broker's fee, the owner will remit the balance within, and I recommend you write 3 days. This is the most common one that you would use, simply because since you're withholding 1 month's rent, regardless of whether or not you're getting paid 10% or 100% of the first month, you want to pull the money out of that, pay your renter's broker from there, and then the rest you keep, and if there's any money due, the landlord needs to pay you. There is also the option for the owner to pay the broker fee within a certain number of days, or for the owner to pay the broker fee within a certain number of days from which each rent payment is due for the tenant. That has more to do, like if it's a short term and they're paying month to month to month to month, the person's probably not going to shell out money, so that's something you would do. or if there's anything else, you specify it there. New leases and renewals. If an owner enters into a new lease or renewal for the original lease with a tenant placed in the property or by through the broker, owner agrees to pay the broker a compensation in connection with the new lease or renewal, the amount specified in paragraph 6A. So therefore, you would write that out. Protection period, owner agrees to pay the broker fee within a certain number of days after the end of the listing period. Owner leases the property to any prospect to whom the broker or any other broker communicated during the lease period regarding the lease period if requested. Basically what this talks about is that it's basically you're being protected for those dates that you specified before, that you are the representative if anything was to happen within that after. So usually what I would write here is I would write 6 months. So I would write 180 days. Anyone who I've shown this property within 180 days after the lease agreement expires, if they come back, then I'm protected by it. Usually this is very hard to follow up on, but it's just there for you to protect yourself. Cooperating and compensating with other brokers. Here we talk about what we are offering additional brokers or renters agents to come in and rent it out for. So the most common one is always going to be to write out that we are compensating %50 of the first month's rent. So you would click on all three and write on the second one, not on the gross, but on the 50% of the first month's rent. Okay, because basically what we're saying is that there's if for any reason it's coming through this or it's coming through that, we're offering that first month's rent that we're withholding in escrow, we're offering to give that 50%. If we're offering something different, for instance, we're offering a percentage of the gross value of the rent, it would have to be whatever it is. Let's say we said 10, we would offer 5%. Or we can negotiate any way that we want. But whatever it says, it has to be disclosed to the landlord that this is what we're going to put on the MLS. If for any reason we are not offering any of these, then guess what? You cannot put it on the MLS. Early termination. If owner decides not to lease the property, the owner has a reasonable, deems the owner's reason acceptable, the owner may conditionally terminate the agreement. Now what we say here is that we're going to be paid a cancellation fee. More common on rentals is a $500 fee. Again, this is something that is debatable, but this is the most common one, is to have a $500 cancellation fee, and that simply is to cover your photography or any kind of advertising you've done in order to do it. This last section has to do with dispute resolution. If there is some kind of dispute on any of the terms here, that we agree to go to arbitration and not, hurt each other. A brokerage relationship, owner authorizes broker to act as, and we are all, usually we are a transaction broker. If we are the single agent or a single agent owner's consent to transaction broker, you want to make sure you want to put that. Or if we're not representative of the owner, you want to put that also. The more common one is obviously to be a transaction broker, and you need to make sure that you spell that out. Now here in section 11, we're going to go over it. This is more of the miscellaneous and any additional clauses that you might have. We could go on for days of what this could be, but basically it's if there's any additional terms for the rental that the owner wants to make sure that you cover, you want to make sure that you put it in there. This is the section where the owner is going to be signing. If there's a tax ID, they need to advise it. If there's an email address, they need to advise it. This is where your broker would have to sign, and the date. And that's basically it. Once you've done all of this and you filled it all out, you can save it. You see a little spin wheel that goes, and now you can close it. So now we have the contract completely filled out. We've gotten it through the content, we filled it out, but now we need to have it signed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the contract that we want to get signed. We're gonna click down on the choose forms below and we're gonna go to the e-sign function. When we go to the e-sign function, it says, hey, would you like to use the terms that you have on here? I like to create a new session. You wanna make sure you open up a new session, and it's gonna take you to a screen that is going to request that you advise it. Here it says, if this is not open, click here. So you're gonna click on that, and this is gonna take you to the e-sign section of the contract. It's gonna ask you to put in a title or an email subject, and so I would write here, good morning, Mr. Jones. Okay. You want to fill out any additional information. This is what I have automatically plugged into every single email. Here it's going to ask me if you when everything is executed, do you want a final copy? I'm going to say yes. Go ahead and email that to me. Or you can put in the name of the owner so that the owner gets it. You want to make sure that everybody is sent this at once, so you can do it by one at a time. In this instance, it's a listing agreement, and it's only going to be for two. I think it's for two people that we created it. We're going to make sure that it's filled out correctly. Oh no, it's only for one person. I'm sorry. So it's just one person. It is irrelevant because it's an LLC. You want to include me as a signer. You don't need to. You can allow signers to delegate for another person. This is usually when you have, this is a different kind of transaction, but this is usually when you're sending it to a realtor and you want the realtor to assign it to someone else. In this instance, the listing agreement, you don't need to do it. Send a CC email or final documents as an attachment. You can do that. And then we're going to go to next. Here, it's going to take me to my address book. From this address book, I'm going to be able to find this owner . And I'm going to put this owner into the transaction. I click on the owner and I hit next. So now it's going to take me to basically assign whoever I put into the transaction, which was that owner, and I want to make sure that that owner appears as the owner for this transaction. I'm going to say who the seller's agent is and who the seller's broker is, if it's necessary. I'm going to pick that contract. I'm going to go to next. Now what it does is that it opens up the contract. You're able to see the contract, and it'll tell you right here up top who it is that we're looking to sign. And you're going to be able to scroll down, and it's going to show you everywhere that this signature is being assigned to the owner. Okay, so you saw that? So as you saw right here in the bottom, it shows that a broker associate or the broker must sign it. So we're gonna go back. And I did this on purpose so I could show you guys how to add someone. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna add someone as a signer. And obviously, since I am the person that is responsible for this, I'm going to put myself in. I put in my name, my last name, my email, and I'm going to save it. So now I've got the owner here and myself. I click on both. Okay, so I'll be able to look at here everywhere that in the transaction the seller is authorized to sign. But since I am the listing agent and I did not include it at the beginning, what it's going to do is it doesn't automatically put me in there. So I'm going to have to drag and drop on every page right next to where where the landlord is signing. And it shows a broker associate, broker or sales associate. I need to drop a signature for myself. Okay, so it's very easy. Just make sure that your name is up top and you keep on going down and dropping off those initials. Okay, once it's all done, you press next. It basically gives you that screen again to double check your work. Since we've already gone through it, we're going to press next. It reiterates that email that we created at the beginning. And there you press finish. Okay, so now it's going to take you basically to the signing session section where you'll be able to see that Juan was invited to sign as I was invited to sign. Okay, you'll see how many signing locations there are. And I'm going to open it up just so we can conclude this video. I'm going to take you guys to my email so that you guys can see what it is that you're going to be receiving as the realtor. As a realtor, you're going to get an email that copies the email that you sent to your client, and now it's going to say review and sign. So it's going to take you to a screen where you're going to be able to execute under your name. It's going to tell you what your name is. If for any reason your name is wrong and you want to write that your name is J. Valverde, it's going to tell you what kind of signature you want to use, so you pick the one that you like. Okay, and then you click that you agree to the consumer disclosure and you start. And here it's going to take you part by part to initial each part that you gave your signing. It tells you what each signature and code represents. You go to the start section, it'll take you to the very first one. You click on it, then next, 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 and then it'll tell you have completed all the fields. Are you ready to finish this up? You say yes. And that being said, you can now go back into your Form Simplicity, into Active, look up that property, go into the history, and click on the status. Press to open up the next one, and you will see that Guillermo Valverde has completed his signing and that Juan has been invited. And that's basically what you do. So that concludes our listing agreement presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it.